All right, welcome back to the Slice. We've got another video here before the action gets going in Australia because I want to talk about my top 5 contenders for the men's championship. Not the pretenders, not the actors, the real contenders. The 5 guys who I think, one of which will be the champion. And I'm going to give my reasons why. And you might be a little surprised why he was not included in the top 5, but I've just been thinking over the last couple days. I've written it down with some reasons, and we're going to run through them right now, 1 to 5. Here we go. Here's the Slice. Thanks for being here, people. As we all know, you need to subscribe if you want this channel to keep going. So thanks for that. Thanks for supporting us by clicking the links below, checking out our products. And Go Sport is the official bag of the Slice for the Australian Open. So check them out down below. But the Australian Open top 5 contenders, I've deliberated on this. And the first one is going to be very obvious. We're all, I think most of us, according to the community poll in our community tab here, like over 70% agree with this. But the number 1 contender for the Australian Open, in my mind, is Novak Djokovic. To me, that's pretty obvious. You could pretty much put him as the number 1 contender for the last 15 years in Australia, 10 years at least. He's been dominant. This is his best tournament. He's going for his 10th Australian Open. He's the best hardcourt player in the world right now, in my opinion, by a decent chunk based on what we saw at the end of last season. And that hasn't changed in any way. And the other players haven't stepped up in a way to think that they have a better chance than he does to win this title. So he's my number 1 player, number 1 contender. So that one is pretty obvious. Stay till the end for 4 and 5, where I think you might be surprised a little bit. Number 2 for me, I'm going to go with Stefanos Tsitsipas. Some people would say, well, he made 7 finals last year, but he lost 5 of them. Last year was a little bit of a weird year. He had super success. He had 61 match wins in 2022, which is right up there with as many as anyone else. He did make it to 7 finals, though. He only won 2 of them. He wasn't mentally strong. But I wonder if some of I feel like he had a lot of pressure on himself to win a major last year, and he didn't. And I wonder if he will play with less pressure here in Australia. We'll see. But I do know that last year in Australia, before he lost to Medvedev in the semifinals, he was playing incredible tennis on these courts. Like, he was just untouchable. I think he beat Jannik Sinner in the 4th round of the quarterfinals, and it was so lopsided it wasn't even funny. And Sinner was playing good tennis at that time. And so I think if he can get back to that level and he plays like that, who knows? He's had a break here in the offseason. I do expect Stefanos to be an incredibly hard player to knock out. But we'll see. But he is number 2 on my list of contenders at the Australian Open. So we'll see. Let me know what you think of that. Number 3, Daniil Medvedev. Fair. I think he's a better hardcourt player than anyone else on tour other than Novak Djokovic, in my opinion. Now, last year was a weird year for him because of Russians not being able to play at Wimbledon. He had the groin injury, and he did kind of choke away the final here in Australia, which I think messed him up for the rest of the year. His confidence was kind of shot. He did get to number 1, but it was a weird year. I think a lot of things would have been different in 2022 if he had won the Australian Open like he was in the position to do, 2 sets to love up in the final, but he didn't. So it was a weird year as far as confidence goes, but he still, to me, has to be in the top 3 contenders for this title based on how good he is on hardcourt. So that's why he's number 3 for me. Number 4, Taylor Fritz. Taylor Robert Fritz. I actually don't even know if that's his middle name, but he's an American, and he's got a great draw. He's in the Casper Ruud quarter, which is the bottom quarter, and I take Fritz if Ruud and Fritz play on this quicker Australian Open surface. And then Fritz wouldn't have to play Novak until the semis, which is easier to play Novak in the semis than in the final, for sure. So, if he's going to start beating these guys, the Australian Open semifinal might be a good place for him to start, obviously, against Djokovic. That's my kind of theory there, is he's got an easier draw. He's in a good section. So I think getting to the quarterfinals or definitely the semifinals is highly likely. And then we'll see. We'll see, because Djokovic might have to play Kyrgios in the quarterfinal, he might, if he was to lose, obviously Fritz would have a massive advantage in that bottom half. But Taylor Fritz is higher than some other guys like Nadal or Felix or Casper Ruud for me because of the draw that he's in and the way that the Australian Open, the court benefits his game benefits from these court surfaces and playing surfaces, I think. So we'll see. I remember he had a great match against Djokovic a couple of years ago and he didn't win, but he was very in there and he made a few mistakes and he got tight, obviously, where he might not now, but he was very in that match. And that was an interesting one. So Taylor Fritz is my 4th hot best contender for the Australian Open. What do you think about that? And number 5, people might say I'm biased. People might say it's because I'm Canadian, but I've got Felix Auger-Aliassime as the 5th contender at the Australian Open. That's right, ahead of Nadal. Nadal does not make my top 5. Scandalous? You let me know. Am I a hater on Nadal? Absolutely not. But based on the draw, Nadal has a nightmare draw. We can all agree on that. So that's tough. And Felix has a better draw, a decent draw, I would say. He would have to beat Cam Norrie and Stefanos Tsitsipas in order to make the semifinals to potentially play Nadal. But the odds of Nadal making the semifinals are not insanely good, in my opinion. So Felix making the semifinals, getting the role with the confidence he played with in the fall. If he could find that again, yes, he lost his first match of 2023. That's not great. But it doesn't really matter. It's an ATP 250. He's got lots of rest now. He'll have lots of energy for this tournament going through it. And to me, if the top 4 guys can't get it done, Felix Auger-Aliassime, I've got a lot of confidence in him. He played amazing here in Australia last year, almost this close to beating Daniil Medvedev. He's won a bunch of titles since then, 4 ATP titles since then. He's won the Davis Cup with Canada. I think he feels like he's the man, and I feel like he's ready to really take a crack at taking that next step in winning a major. So there's my top 5. Novak Djokovic 1, Stefanos Tsitsipas 2, Daniil Medvedev 3, Taylor Fritz 4, Felix Auger-Aliassime 5, and now the snubs. Who got snubbed from my list? Rafa Nadal got snubbed. I already told you it's not because I don't believe in him. It's because he's got a tough draw, and he's a year older, and he played terribly at the end of last year. So I can't put him in my top 5. Nick Kyrgios. Again, he's in the Novak Djokovic quarter, so I think that's a good enough reason. The odds of him getting out of that quarter are very low. But if he does beat Djokovic, if they play, then obviously I would jump him way up in my list. But just from before the tournament started, can't have him in my top 5. Who else got snubbed? Casper Ruud. He's the number 2 seed. Let's be honest, Casper Ruud does deserve to be there on these quicker courts. I think he's better on the Australian Open, which is heavy balls, have more kick on them off the ground there. The Australian Open courts, to me, what I've heard in the past, don't bounce as high and they're quicker. So that is just not historically helped his game. But we'll see with his little changed backhand, little flatter grip there. Maybe he'll get more through the court with his backhand. But anyways, those are the reason I've left those 3 off my list. Did I snub anyone else? Let me know down below. What do you think about my list? Is it different than yours? I don't know. Those are my top 10 contenders. And I guess I would put the other 3, Nadal, Kyrgios, and Ruud, as pretenders. No offense, boys. Sorry, we can't all be on the list. This is the slice on the top 5 contenders. Subscribe down below. Follow me on Twitter as the action gets started. And we will see you there.